Hello, everybody. My name's Colin Fernandez, and I'm the Marketing Development Director at Sumo. I'm very excited today to bring on a webinar that's really interesting to many of our buyers and users. And it's titled Democratizing Machine Data and Logs for Better Business Outcomes. I'm also very pleased to have Iwan Ising, team leader of service reliability architects at Infor, and especially really focused today on some key topics that I want to bring to the audience today, focused around some of the business and technical aspects of our solutions and our platform. But before I actually go into the actual meat of the webinar, I actually want to spend some time introducing my second speaker. And really, more importantly, is Iwan has been working with Sumo for a very long time. We respect and enjoy the partnership, but there have been some quotes in the industry from Iwan. And the first one that actually got my attention is actually about winning. And winning is a team sport. So what I'd love to do now is to introduce Iwan and tell us a bit about Iwan and tell us a bit about what you do and where this quote came from, Iwan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity, Colin, and Sumo for that matter. So my name is Iwan, or actually the way that my parents intended to pronounce it's Iwan. I work with Infor. I'm heading the service reliability architects. We're a group of very senior architects that are comparable with enterprise architects, but we like to distinguish ourselves with from the perspective that we are, feet in the mud and working with the teams directly. So we always compare ourselves with Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. We're responsible for the reliability of our services to our customers. Infor is a SaaS provider of enterprise software, predominantly ERP systems. And I think that reliability starts at the foundation of any service that you provide. And for us, that's architecture. And we cannot do this alone. And just like Gandalf within the Lord of the Rings, we depend on the fellowship of the ring to win in the end. So winning is something that you do as a team, and it's a team sport. And there is no room for individualism, although we do have the hallmarks of key players. Every single member of my team is a very respected and very knowledgeable person in a technical area as well as a business domain. So we have SRAs that are looking predominantly at serviceless solutions, as well as modern application architectures, microservices, etc. And we have an SRA specifically for observability. But none of the SRAs within Infor can actually make a change within the way that we provide our services to our customers without active participation with the teams that we work with, but also with the vendors that we work with. And we consider the vendors, especially the ones that my team has to collaborate with in a very intensive way, to be partners instead of a vendor customer relationship. We like to work with our vendors in a partnership, and that's a true partnership of equality, where both parties know that you need the other to succeed. And with Sumo, that has been an extremely profitable, so to speak, relationship. We treat Sumo and Sumo treats us in a way that we know that synergy results in better outcomes. I hope that kind of explains why winning is a team sport and why I'm so passionate about it. I think that yes. We don't have the full day to talk about it, but I can talk about this a full day.
Well, thanks, Iwan. That's awesome. I think it'll come more apparent as we go through the questions and how this actually, sums up this analogy around what you're saying here. But what I want to do is just set the scene for the real meat of the webinar. And I always ask these questions around two terms: digital transformation. It's in the air. Just a bit of background. It's my 5-year celebration today at Sumo, but I've been in the industry for 35 years. Now, I've been through about 5 transformations. And what I mean by that is technology never stops, it evolves. And I'm just very interested, Iwan, with what you just said now, is to get your viewpoint on what digital transformation means to you, and what does it mean to Infor, and what are we actually, looking at today? We're still in the COVID world, I say. We've changed our habits. Technology has advanced tremendously. So what's your view on digital transformation?
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations with your 5-year anniversary. And it's interesting that you're saying 5 years, because I always say that, everything in IT, including the people that work with IT, when they look back 5 years from now, they should not recognize themselves. I think a generation is about 5 years. And that also goes to digital transformations. For us within Infor, we've seen over the last 10, 15 years a transformation where we went from predominantly on-premise software solutions to in-cloud service delivery, and then from a single tenant standpoint to multi-tenant standpoint. And as we went through that process, our customers went with us. We have some early adopters, as we always see in the industry, but we also have some customers that are, for whatever very good business reasons, are a little bit hesitant of embracing the cloud and its technologies and benefits. And we see that as we are transforming digitally, or go through that digital transformation within Infor, embracing more and more services that are available in the cloud, including SaaS services as Sumo, we also see that our customers are transforming with us. Our market is changing as well. And it's interesting that you say, that you mentioned the pandemic. We saw over the last 2 to 3 years an increasing speed or velocity of the digital transformations with our customers as well as ourselves. People are no longer going into the office, but work remotely. And we see that there's more and more dependability on metrics, on information, on insights that we get from the systems that we run, from the customers that use our services and our services themselves. And I think that's where currently the focal point of digital transformation is for my team and myself within Infor, and that is gaining more insights into how we are doing from a customer perspective. And I think that stems from the fact that service delivery, as in SaaS, is all about providing value to your customer, and you have to understand what activities you need to undertake in order to maximize that value. And I always say that time is something that you can only spend once, so you have to spend it as effectively as possible. And that means that we should not only look at the cost of running our systems, but I think we should also look at, and maybe even more look at, the value that we gain from it and the value that we provide to our customers. And that's, I think, currently the biggest aspect of digital transformation in the industry, and definitely within Infor, is that use of all the information, all the insights, all the metrics that we get from all of our systems to maximize value to our customers.
Awesome. And this is why I like working with Iwan, because we're going to be talking about value. But I just wanted to ask you another question, Iwan, just from your business side, is that you and Infor cross many industries. Many industries today out there who may be listening to this webinar are not, in that native world. Some are still on-prem, many are still in the legacy phase, and some are cloud first and they're on this journey. Have you seen any differences or trends and I know, so I just hold that thought, the value side appeals to everybody. But have you noticed anything? You talked about high velocity. Is there anything there that's pushing certain industries, or pushing people towards what I call a SaaS world? Are you seeing anything around that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So forget about, let's not talk about cost and value. I think it's very interesting topics. But what we saw over the last 3 years, and mainly I think it's due to the pandemic. We saw that a lot of paradigm shifts and a lot of disruptive developments happened in society. Big paradigm shift is, of course, going from the office, working remotely. Now we're going back and we're talking about hybrid, but also regulations have changed. There's a lot of regulations within the world that change. We got GDPR, we have different implementations of privacy laws all over the world, but we also saw that the location where manufacturing is being performed, from the Far East to local sourcing. And we see that the trend is that every organization, be it a for-profit or a non-profit, in any location in the world, and be it in the cloud or be it on premise, realized, and I think that's expedited because of the pandemic, that the world is changing at an ever increasing pace. And that means that companies must be more and more agile. And this is not IT agility, it's business agility. And that means that every organization, every company must be able to change its direction based on what the market demands. And that needs to be in a timely manner. And we see that adoption of the cloud allows companies to be more agile, less investment upfront because infrastructure is already available. There can be more experimentation done because we're going from pets to kettles. Everybody who's in the infrastructure space knows exactly what I'm talking about. But we also see that the model of pay as you go, or your cost trail your value streams, is one that supports that agility or that ever increasing need and desire to be agile. And I think the other change that we see within the industry, and with companies that are embracing the cloud but also embracing SaaS offerings, is the notion that IT agility is very important, but it is only serving business agility, and that ability of changing direction more quickly by adopting cloud is with all of our customers. And we see that move towards cloud more and more, and also with our customers embracing SaaS more often.
Super. So, with that, it led nicely into our favorite topic, business, agile business. Now, I could have more webinars with you on every single topic that you covered in our last slide, but I want to place it now. We've worked with you. We've created a case study. You've presented together with me, but the real focus was on business-centric IT. I heard you talked about agile business. And something that's very keen to me is because I actually look after some of the business around consolidation, migration. I'm very interested in those business facts. Today, we focus on the practitioner, but we do have an economic buyer, and they're not separated. They talk to each other. As you said, they win together. So what I'd love you to do is to just share with the audience what you regard as driving business value, how you deliver that profitable service. At the end of the day, as you said, it's a cost, it's a value. And the other one is, I love the fact that you use the word value stream, because it is a value stream. But how do you create and unleash that value at Infor? Could you give the audience some insights into that?
Yes, of course. And I have some interesting examples as well. So I always start with, you can do IT and you can become more efficient and more valuable by lowering cost. And I think that that's a good way to start. But there's a problem with lowering costs, because it has an end. When the cost is zero, you cannot go lower. So I try to always focus on increasing value. And then if you can keep the increase in value go faster than the increase in cost that's related to that, you make more profit, and that's good for your margins. And I think that's a very important aspect from a maturity perspective. I think when you start with adopting new services like Sumo, you start with lowering cost, because that's where the initial proposition is, but then you have to start working towards gaining value from that. And there's a number of aspects that we get value from services like Sumo's log management towards our customers. That's the services that we provide to our customers. And that is in that it allows us to, for one, be faster in solving any issues that we have in a production environment. And that's where everything starts when you adopt new technologies from an operational standpoint. And that's become better at being reactive. And of course, being good in responding to incidents or issues that happen will increase the value to your customers. But the next step is being active. And that's, understanding your environment more closely, more intimately, and that way have a very good balance between the cost that you're incurring and the value that you're delivering. And when you are reactive, your value, goes up and down as incidents come. You're quicker at responding, but again, this is only reactive. Striving for, with respect to our services to our customers, to be excellent in our reactive mode, but even more so in our active mode, and that's a maturity aspect of using operational metrics that we gain from working with Sumo. And the next step is, of course, being proactive, and that means that we have to retrieve all the metrics that are relevant from a business value perspective into our software development cycle. And that means that everything that we do that is in service of our customers needs to be validated before we deliver it to our customers. And that also means that we need to have all those insights that we typically require in our production environment from an operational standpoint, also in our development environment, so we can validate that whatever services that we have in place from an operations standpoint are working excellently in our development environment. And this is, I think, where we are also see that concepts like DevOps and DevSecOps are key, where operations find their way in a development environment, and thus ensuring that software services are being developed that increase that business value to our customers. And because we treat operations from a development perspective, it's an engineering practice, we see that we deliver more profitable services at Infor to our customers. They're more profitable for Infor itself, but I think more importantly, and that's why we're so increasingly successful, is that they deliver more value and thus make our customers more profitable as well. So I hope that's addressing your question, Colin, because there's so many angles to this question.
I've got to be careful of asking you other questions because I have so many, but I just want to frame this, okay? You shared some statistics with us, and I just want to home in on some of those because it actually creates a foundation for some of my further questions, is there were some pretty phenomenal results that you shared with us at our community gathering last year, but I just want to bring them out. Saving $1 billion in these times, in our macroeconomic climate. It's about cost savings. It's about really utilizing what you have, and is it fit for purpose?
May I step in there, Colin?
Yes.
So we saved that $1 million in 2021, and in the last 6 months we actually saved $1.5 million. That was not about cost savings. That was important because we needed to have more insights in our product, in our products. So we had to increase the number of gigabytes ingested from a log perspective, but we didn't want to increase the cost involved with that, and that's why we undertook a couple of, I think, from my team perspective, very remarkable efforts. So yes, we did save $1 million in 21, and last year over $1.5 million. But that was, I think, only important because we managed to double the value that we put into Sumo in terms of very effective, but also more logs. So there's always that thing where you increase your insights and you want to do it at the same cost as before.
Awesome. And just 2 more facts on this, and then I'll move on, is thanks for that. That's awesome to hear. The other is the number of people, your proficiency, the speed at which you do things, and the speed at which you troubleshoot and resolve things. And more importantly is the number of hours that you spend. We hear from customers that sometimes they're spending and focusing on the wrong things. How did that impact? And what, I heard you say DevOps, right? So DevOps and now DevSecOps. It's a term, but it's a very powerful term. And we have both. And we're trying to show, customers and talk about the unification of all their use cases. Anything there to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things. So one thing is the amount of time that you spend on managing your environment. So I have a small team. Our core business is actually not managing Sumo or providing operational support to the teams within Infor on Sumo. We're managing the Sumo account, so we're accountable for that. At the start of last year, so about a year ago, I tallied, and we were spending about 300 hours a month on operational aspects of Sumo. By the end of last year, so a month ago, we reduced that to just 20 hours a month. So the 280 hours that gap in between, that work is still done, but it's done through automation and it's done through self-service. So we took it upon us because we didn't want to spend all our time on just Sumo, but also to the other roles and responsibilities of my team by automating pretty much everything that we could automate, and by making everything that we felt comfortable in providing into the hands of our users, the other Infor users, about 16,000 in total, through self-service. And that was by implementing very clear but usability-focused governance in place, and we can talk about it if you want. The other thing that we do is we make sure that we're in constant dialogue with our technical account managers at Sumo. And just to give you an example, last year summer, the Indian government actually put in a new regulation in place that they needed insights into what was happening with Indian companies or with transactions done on Indian soil. And we needed to comply with that for all of our customers. And by working with our Sumo team, as well as our information security officers, we were able, and this is no exaggeration, but we were able to comply to that regulation within 30 minutes for both our Sumo accounts. So all the logs that are generated in our development environments as well as our production environments. And that's by continuously knowing what Sumo has to offer, what we need, and how we can do that. And we were able to pick and choose from a number of solutions that we could think of, and we picked one that was just 30 minutes away, because it solved a problem, at least for the short run. And that's that agility that comes with having that win-win, or that winning is a team sport mindset. And there's no contemplation between within for nor with Sumo that one is trying to outdo the other. We're heading into the same direction as a team.
Lovely. I think we're going to do another Weber on logs in 30 minutes with you. Just hold that thought, because I do want to come back to that. So, we talked about some major themes here, and we're sort of hurrying through this, but something that I want to bring, this is probably the most important area, is, as you mentioned, you've been working with Sumo for a fairly long time. We really respect the partnership and the insights and the knowledge and the push to move us together into the same direction. But this is a big word. You can see how big it is. But I want to talk about democracy. I've actually put some posts out there purely because I was working on this, and it inspired me to really look at governance. You gave an example here, a perfect example of different countries, different compliance, different regulation, different culture, different speeds. And the ability to do something locally, but internationally and globally is critical today, in terms of security and observability. But I want to just prise open all these letters, democratization. What does it actually mean? And I've been in IT, as I mentioned, for a long time. And the one thing that I see today is the collaboration and the secure sharing of information is difficult when you're in silos, when you're broken, when you have so many tools. So can you highlight that? And the other one is logs.
Yep.
And what is machine data to you? And we talk about governance and different types of data. So I'm just teeing you up here to summarize what that means to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so most of our customers are multinationals. They do business all over the world, and we have a lot of customers in a lot of different markets. And we don't have a single product that we sell, or a single service that we provide. We have various ERP systems targeting at micro verticals, and they're being used all over the world. But we don't have a presence all over the world. And you can understand that there's a lot of different rules and regulations that apply to how we do business, including the information that we store. And that includes information stored in logs. And the only way where you can be successful in managing all this complexity that we have, and when I would give you an insight in our architecture, it would be even more complex in order to provide this, is by making sure that the information is available where decisions are being made. And this is a trend that you see in leadership and management, is where information shouldn't go to the decision makers. Decision makers should have, it should be made by where the information is, so at the lower level. So that means we have to make sure that every single person that has to take a decision at whatever question or whatever situation presents itself must have all the data at their disposal. And at the same time, we have to make sure that information is not, or that ability of accessing that information is not in violation of any laws, any regulations, because that transpires, from us to our customers, and that's a big issue, and we take that extremely serious. So we make a very strong division between logs on the one hand, and then also machine data, which is, in my view, it's logs that are being processed in order to drive insights in the operability of our products. We have a very clear set of rules within Infor on how we work with our logs, with the data that we get from it, and also with the raw data that we have on our environments. The first is, of course, that you have to be very careful with person identifiable information, PII. Our principle is do not store PII in logs. And there's a lot of reasons why you would never want to do that, but sometimes you have to. Sometimes it needs to be in there for security measures, doing cyber forensics. But that means that you need to make those logs accessible to just a small portion of your community, of your population. And you have to set the rules around that also very clearly. When you provide access to sensitive information, you have to make sure that at the very least, you know exactly who has access and why they should have access. And if that's if somebody has access that shouldn't have access, you need to be able to revoke that access very quickly. And that is what we do. So I think it was Churchill that said that a good a foundation of rules and laws make a democracy. And that's what we do as well within Infor. We have a very clear and very small set of rules and architectural and operational principles that we apply to all of our products. And we've defined them in such a way that I haven't come across any reason why there should be an exception to our rules, to our set of principles. But I have to make very clear that this has been something that has only been effective since 2.5, maybe 3 years. We've been a long-term user of Sumo. I think our first contract was signed 7 or 8 years ago, maybe. And we had to mature into the state that we are now in as well. And we had to spend quite a bit of time to understand what works and what doesn't work. And I would say that maybe even took 5 years as we were also running and then already established a company with services to our customers. But in the last 3 years, we saw an uptake in value that we got from using log aggregation and log management, and specifically by doing it through Sumo. But that was only possible because we could provide each and every employee within Infor access to logs and never have to worry about anybody having access to those logs that should not have access. And that is, I think, what democratization means. It means providing access to everybody without having to worry on who has access.
I love it. That's awesome. I love that. I'm writing that down now, and I want to still hold you on to the the area of governance, but just another one on here. I've been working with many customers and working with Sumo, and we're noticing that there's an abundance of tools out there. There's a sprawl of data and tools. Each tool has its own. So in the context of 7 years ago, congratulations as well. In terms of volume, velocity, not all data is equal, but all machine data and logs are valuable.
Yeah.
What have you seen as a trend? And what has Sumo done in that respect? Yes, you can't just linearly grow. You have to think about what you're collecting, analyzing, and using as insights.
Yeah.
And personally, to me, there are a lot of false positives, data that doesn't serve a purpose. Can you quickly mention something about the volume and the velocity around data and what's happened maybe in the last couple of years or 7 years?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know the exact numbers, but I can tell you that year over year, we have an 80% growth on volume of logs being ingested by Sumo. And that trend has been ongoing for the last 5 years, and that's the data that I have. So every year, we are logging 80% more of the than we did in the past year. What we saw in this happening is a few things. One is way back, logging was something that developers did. Right? You put a log statement in your code, and you do it because you want to have insight on what's happening, and usually it's for debugging. But what is being logged and how it's being logged was all the way, completely up to the developer. And we saw that I would say a natural convergence, an organic convergence of log standards. Of course, in the industry, there's a lot of different log standards. We also all know the access logs of web servers, etc. But we also saw that developers starting to harmonize the way that they generate logs and that are being ingested. So it becomes easier to correlate logs of individual components of an application. And this is not something that we enforced. What we did and what we continue to do is pointing out that certain practices yield better results than other practices, because we want to make sure that people adopt practices, adopt standards, and so on, because it helps them. Nobody wants to change for the worse, but everybody wants to change for the better. I don't think that people in principle are against changing. I think that it's just that 80% of the people want to change for a different reason that you would like to change them to change. So we need to tap into that. The other thing that we have been doing that is and has allowed us to absorb that 80% increase in log volume is by making it easier to do the right thing. And again, this is adoption of new standards. But we also saw that the right thing for Infor has been reducing the cost of logging. We want to have 80% increase of log, but we want to have 100% increase of value that we get from it. And we leave it up to the people that generate the logs or that are reading the logs to determine what value they get from it. So we introduce something that we call a Sumo owner. And a Sumo owner is the person that's accountable for the log behavior of an application, whatever definition we have for that application. They're also accountable for the cost incurred. So we have this, and I think that this is something that we'll touch upon later on in the webinar as well. But this has allowed us to make to defer decisions on what is being logged and how it's being logged and where it's being logged to the people that need the logs, not the people that are somewhere else in the organization with an opinion, including myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is what we saw. I think the way that we were able to do this was by, again, working very closely with Sumo. And I think one of the best things that we did here was working with Sumo to provide insights on log behavior to those individual Sumo owners. And I think the reason why it works so well with Sumo is that we have this regular calls with our technical account managers, who are not only helping us, but they're proactively informing us about weird stuff they see. I get on a regular basis, but fortunately not that often anymore, emails from Don or Tam about some discrepancies he sees in the usual way that we are logging. So when we all of a sudden have a huge spike in ingested logs, he informs me immediately, and that gives me an opportunity to look into what was going on and get in touch with the right people to see, if this was something that is can be explained or something that we should be worried about never to happen again. And that proactive attitude of our Sumo partners has resulted in the ability of my team as service reliability architects to be very proactive towards our constituents within the organization.
I want to pick up on that at the end, because reacting, proactivity, I think affects your culture, affects your winning. But there were so many good things there, but I actually want to bring it and spin it off from another angle. You're a technician, architect. I've been that all my life. You don't have to know the nth degree, but because we understand architecture, we understand applications, and we know where we're going. It's sometimes, when you look at the macroeconomic climate and change, you used words, aggregation. So I hear customers disaggregating and aggregating and correlating and, centralizing, all these words that talk about bringing it together, but also giving you the ability to access it in a secure and trusted way. Centralizing. So I mentioned before, I've been through, a number of whatever you want to call it, changes, but it's always gone from centralized, decentralized, centralized, decentralized, and now we're living in this world of both. But what I'd love you to do, it's another big word. I didn't realize how many big words I have here, but is to bring this down to bare, common sense. What is that scenario? I think you touched on it. One is, giving tools and services, but being able to access things globally. And the other one is having it, there ready for you. So could you comment on this term around decentralizing governance at Infor? And what did Sumo exactly do there for you?
Here's a teaser. Sumo was instrumental in our success in doing this. Okay, so all of our logs are in one location, and it's since about a year and a half, all the logs are accessible to everybody within Infor. But for a very few, as I mentioned before, we have some sensitive information in our logs that we need for cyber forensics or for meet regulations. And those are, accessible to the people that have. And we do that by having very clear, unambiguous roles defined. We only have a very limited set of roles in our environment. I think that we have 13 roles, and 3 of them or 4 of them are reserved for very specific individuals. But it means that there's no single log that not everybody can look at. So everybody can access the logs and drive the value from those logs as they see fit. This is really important for us. So it's a centralized location where the logs are. The other thing, and I think that's maybe even more important from a value proposition perspective, is that we have the governance or the accountability, I would rather use that word, related to the logs and the log ingestion with the people that are empowered to amend the log behavior of the products that generate that logs. And that's maybe a little bit abstract. So let me explain that with a simple example. So we have an application. It's a Hello World application, or let's call it the Hello Infor and Sumo application, and it generates a little bit of logs, and nobody's looking at those logs. But still, because we generate that logs and being ingested, we pay for those logs, right? You pay for ingestion. If nobody is driving any value of those logs, or very limited value that's less than the cost, then we need to make changes to our Hello Infor and Sumo application. There's only one person that can do that, and that's the development manager. So we make the person that that has the mandate to change the log behavior of an application accountable for everything that has to do with logging for that application. That way, when I provide data to that person regarding that log behavior, then that person can act on it. Mm-hmm. And that's the data-driven aspect, right? So we make sure that each and every product that we have that's independently developed by a product team, that's log behavior of the product is owned by a single person. It's the Sumo owner that I referred to earlier on. That person, we provide with the information that that person needs in order to determine whether to spend time on a new feature of that product or to spend time on changing the log behavior of the product, whatever is most valuable to Infor and our customers. Because sometimes we're logging it very excessively and it's costing us a lot, and developing on a new feature would cost less. That's not happening that often. What happens more often is that we need more logging in order to improve our service to our customer. And it's that person that has the mandate to change the priorities of the product team to spend a little bit more on creating effective log lines into the product. Now, the data-driven strategy, we had already something that's out of the box from Sumo, and that's ingest budgets that is giving us a lot. So an ingest budget is basically, it's a number of gigabytes that can be ingested on a daily basis, a 24-hour cycle. And when that limit is reached, you either stop ingesting logging or you continue, but you can raise an alarm. And that Sumo owner is actually the owner of an ingest budget. And therefore, that person can get a signal saying that too much logs are being ingested into this ingest budget. You need to act, or actually you need to be aware of that. We're not telling people that they have to act. And in our development environment, we actually stop logging. So that's a matter of control. Okay. And this has worked nicely. But here comes the thing that we did together with Sumo, and I think that we spent about 3 months at the very least to get this going, which is that we have actual data on the cost of logging for a product. And we do this based on the fact that logs can be ingested in one of 3 tiers. There's the continuous tier, there's a frequent tier, and there's an infrequent tier. What you can do with logs in each of these tiers is different. The continuous tier is the most expensive one because it has the most functionality attached to it. You can put the logs or data from the logs on dashboards, you can create alerts, etc. But that comes at a cost. In most of the cases, we don't need that. I would say that 80%, or maybe even 90 or 95% of all the logs that we are generating from our applications, we don't need those logs to be featured on a dashboard or alert on. We need them for investigations on issues later on if they arise. And only 5 to 20%, and usually it's around 5 to 10% of the log that we generate relate to situations that we need to be aware of immediately. It's the error logs or the warning logs. And we keep in the continuous. Now we can show to each of our Sumo owners exactly the dollar amount associated with the log ingestion of the product that they own. And that takes into consideration where those logs end up in which of the tiers. We can therefore also show them that by spending some time to rethink where the logs are being sent to, what tier, what the effect is of that. And we can do that on a day-to-day basis. So today they are retiering. That's how we call that process of moving logs from one tier to another tier. The next day we can show the impact of that in a dollar amount. And that makes it, of course, very, convenient for the Sumo owners to determine whether or not they should spend some time on retiering or on a new feature or on generating more logs from that product. And then they can validate their assumption that I want to spend time on this because it's going to save us so much or it's going to provide us so much. And then afterwards, some day after, we can tell them that, okay, your initial gut feeling on the value of this activity is actually exceeding it, or it's less than we expected. And that's where you want to be agile, right? You want to be able to respond on changes in the world that you live in. So we've created together with Sumo that feedback loop on a dollar value basis, and we couldn't have done it without Sumo. And I think that what we've done, and to the extent that we've done it, is rather unique.
Yes, and may I say to you that we're pioneering economics and costs together with customers like yourself. So I encourage some of the audience who may be listening to this on demand to take a look at the case study, to have a look at our public assets on costing and flexible licensing, because it plays a very big part, not just in Infor's model, but in some of our other customers. But I want to home in and sort of close down now on the last 5 to 7 minutes around challenges. And if you can just sort of summarize,
Yep.
the typical ones you faced, you resolved, and what is in the pipe at the moment? What's your next mission with Sumo? Anything there that you want to share?
Yeah. So we needed to adopt Sumo as quickly as possible when we started out 7-8 years ago, and that meant Sumo became a free-for-all environment, not a Wild West. There's a lot of uncharted territory. So we, instead of thinking first on everything that needed to be thought, and I think at the time Sumo was not ready to give us a lot of guidance in that respect either, because we are quite a unique organization, and Conway is also present in our situation. So we had this free-for-all uncharted territory, and then at some point you have to start implementing some rules. And the law of the land needs to come in, and I think that's has been one of the challenges, that what we wanted was not yet available to the extent that we needed it, and that was resolved by having that very close collaboration with Sumo. It was that very intimate relationship that we have with Sumo that has allowed us to do it. I think my example with that dollar amount of per ingested gigabyte that we can now provide is an example of that. We continue to do that. We have a lot of situations in our environment that where the searches that we're doing, the way that we manage our logs is far from optimal, and that is something that we continue to solve. We're hitting the soft limits of the Sumo service on a continuous basis, and on the one hand we need those limits raised, but also we need to fix that. And when you have theoretically 16,000 people that can act and use Sumo, that's a challenge. And this is, I think, one of the challenges that we have with our decentralized model. But I think our benefits definitely outweigh the cost that we have with that. Moving forward, we are looking into more observability aspects. Tracing is one of the things that we have that's being planned. A lot of our decentralized governance model we want to implement with traces as well, but there we see another challenge, and that is that a trace is never just confined or restricted to a single product, not in our environment. And I think in every IT environment where the IT landscape is already or is moving towards a microservice architecture, you'll see that traces span different microservices. And you will find that different business services, meaning services provided to customers or to your end users, will have different SLAs attached to them, and SLIs and SLOs for that matter. So we see a lot of challenge in that respect, in how to manage a very complex environment as the one that we have, organizationally as well as IT architecturally, and how to handle that when we have observability that is by default cross cross products. So that's something that we're planning to solve, and I have some ideas, but yeah, I'm not ready yet to do a webinar on that.
No, but that's awesome. I just want to sort of close. Lastly, I heard this, and you've been an exemplary customer of ours. I learned so much. I think we're very much a learning company. We're innovating, but we're open to that learning mentality to share. But in, maybe top 3 things, and then I'll sort of end the webinar, is you mentioned really working together with our support and value team. Sometimes we think about products, we think about cost, in terms of technology being utilized. Top 3 things that you think, differentiated and made the difference for our partnership. And maybe we continue because we're on a journey together. But can you highlight that just to summarize and to the audience?
Oh yeah. So the first thing is that, so we're in a relationship, and relationships can only thrive when there's trust. And we trust our log aggregation and log management vendor a lot. And I think that's really important, that mutual trust. And that, in addition to that, is that accept that some things are just not possible. Or maybe they might be possible, but they're just not feasible. You have to accept it from both ends, right? And that's, and we trust that you do, and you've shown that in a lot of cases, and also the other way around, that sometimes for us it's just impossible to do what you thought that customers should do, and you should be ready to amend your ways and adapt to this new circumstance, and that's there. And I think that's, again, both Sumo and Infor accept that some things are just not possible, and you have to adapt to that. I think those are 2 very important aspects. And then I think the third one is that we have a dialogue, and it's not that we have individual meetings. The meetings are periodic, but they're a dialogue. Sometimes we just end one meeting and we pick up where we left off the next meeting. And I think this is really important. And sometimes it is important that we continue the dialogue offline through email and the like. And whenever that's required, I am tapping into the rest of the Infor organization to get the right people. And the same thing goes for the Sumo team that we work with. When it's required, I know that they have access, or they will do everything in their power to get access to the people that know the answers. I don't need my technical account manager to know everything, but I need to know that he has access to the people that know collaboratively everything, and it's vice versa. And you'll hear me always say that it's always collaboration, and it's always I should say that what I expect from my partner is what I expect my partner to expect from me.
Fantastic. And I think you've summarized it beautifully there. And what I want to do, I think we've covered on the what's next, but anything more to add there? What's next? Where to next later in 2 hours? Are you going somewhere else for another webinar? I think what I just wanted to stay here is that maybe I'll just push it forward, Iwan, and just talk a bit. I don't want to have, I've given you enough questions, but I want to ask you is that if the audience want to learn from you, if the audience want to find out about how you actually, not to overdo it, but where can they hear from you? We do have a beautiful case study that both of us worked on. We've got some amazing social around it as well. You can come to Iwan or myself and connect with us online. But where can they find you?
Usually the first slide I always have, and the last slide I always have in decks that I create is it's got a QR code with how to reach out to me. But I can say that just try to find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with everybody and learn from what other people see as as valuable and what their insights are. I definitely don't know all the answers. I always say that I'm rather stupid, but I know smart people. So try to find me on LinkedIn. It's IWAN EISING, or you can try to find me on Medium. And when you go to architect.blog, that's ARC-E-TECT.blog, you get to my Medium account, and I publish there on a very regular basis on pretty much everything related to software engineering, software architecture, and leadership. And yeah, I'd love to meet you there. Love to meet you on LinkedIn. And yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me and touch.
And I want to personally thank you for leaning in always and driving, I think, our business together. And so thank you for your time, Iwan, today. It's been lovely to see you again. Both Iwan and I are fortunate to be in the Netherlands. It's a bright day today, but thank God in the sun. And thank you very much for accommodating this webinar today.
Yep. Thanks, Colin.